Hi guys. Tonight, I'm going to discuss some things going on with the game I've got, my personal life, just things going on in general. Good things, for the most part. We're almost out of August. It's been a good month. It's been a fantastic month. As you don't know, you're on my website, you're on my channel, Bruce Lombardo 75. I used to call myself America's DM just as a spoof, just to kind of poke fun at things. But I'm a geek, and sometimes real life gets in the way of that. Now, nothing drastic has happened. Haven't gotten married. Didn't have a long-lost son come out of Germany. Daddy, I'm 22. No, nothing like that. Don't get your panties in a bunch, America. Don't worry. However, I don't document enough on my games. And really, the gaming videos I make that I put on YouTube aren't even really to get me any notoriety or fame, but they're more or less just a way for me to archive something, and it's cheaper than using iCloud or some other service like that. Honey Brown. Never gonna stop drinking that if I can afford it, if I can avoid having to quit. Never gonna quit being a gamer either, and I'm 42. This video is going up naked, like all my other videos. The things that I discuss in these videos are typically just my own musings on the gaming community, or maybe things that are right in front of my face that I think are pretty cool, or me at my table. And some of you guys really like that. I'm sorry that I haven't posted a lot lately. Been, sadly, busier than I'd like to be. The reason why I use YouTube is that it's a cheaper version of most other services, and the fact that you can set this down and walk away, fold your laundry, do your chores, and I can still talk to you. I'm not pretty. I don't need to be visible. I'm not a newscaster. And you people out there agreeing with me, God bless you. Got 2 raw eggs sitting in there. Let's begin this video. I began this channel years ago because I wanted to have an archive of my gaming sessions. And I thought it was kind of cool to do that. I thought it was really fun to just kind of put out a camera, press record, and see what happens. Because sometimes people that have an affinity for the games really have a way to actually interact with the world that normally they can't. And not saying that my players and I can't. I'm saying my players and I enjoy the games as a means of getting together. Whereas some people go to a bar or they sit down for lunch. We get together and we recreate this. This is our way of enjoying ourselves. Recreate. Yes, I invented word. No, I didn't. It's our way of enjoying ourselves and having fun on our terms. Just like Gary and Dave and all those guys had fun in the garage, and later on a very nice legacy building tour of their lives in the 70s and 80s. No real difference. None whatsoever. And you gotta think about that just for a second, because when Gary and them were writing these games, and they were making this possible, they were the only ones doing it. But they were literally in a garage, kind of like Steve Jobs was in the early 70s, and they were going into uncharted territory. Scary stuff when you think about it. But for the most part, this was his way to try to do something he loved. And in time, it became a way for him to make really good money. It took him decades to do it. A lot of you young guys out there, most of you won't make your millions for quite a while, if ever. But find something you really enjoy and do it. Now that I've had my soapbox, okay. Alright, this is gonna probably alright, there we go. Friendlier, got a little bloom going on behind me. My game's Sunday. So Sunday I'll be happy. So I'm running my game again. Is that better? Hey, there we go. Let me get off camera for a second, see what I can do here to improve the light. So, my game, going to do a little bit of talk about it. A gaming session that has been running largely at Night Watch Games, sometimes at my own abode, which you're seeing video from here. We've been having a wonderful game session in a very nice shared universe called the Lost Lands. Now the Lost Lands, to paraphrase, that way I don't offend people, the Lost Lands is a really cool but older school campaign that began with a couple guys in college back in the 70s. This is going to annoy me. Yep. This is why I prefer Lost Lands versus any other campaign, because of the same problems that I'm going through here with just trying to get my camera angle right, as opposed to something like Greyhawk or some other polished locale like Eberron or Forgotten Realms. With the third-party nature of most companies that write for Pathfinder 5th edition or 3rd edition or 4th edition, whatever, you have a group of people that they do very good at importing their love of their system and their hard work, and generally they do a great job of making you realize that they enjoyed building this product. But at the same time, you have a lot of people that want to have full gloss, full color, large amount of money for PDF or larger amount of money for print product than others are willing to pay for. Myself and a large segment of the community that purchases games and such, we have made our voice known, and we like good material, and we're willing to pay for it. Now I'm making this video clear discussion as to why I'm doing this video. The main mission statement for this one is to catch people up on what's gone on in my game, and to give an overview as to what are we playing with, what are the things in Bruce's game that are currently being enjoyed. So For the longest time, the players were advancing through the Stoneheart Valley hardcover book, and it's a great book. If you are not familiar with the Stoneheart Valley, I think I talked about this 2 years ago with Mike, but this book here is one of the premier Pathfinder opening books, I guess you'd say, for low levels. It provides you with a hexagonal based sandbox, kind of like what Kingmaker does, but it doesn't do the kingdom building aspects in the vanilla game. You can add that yourself. Not difficult to do. You can add that in any game you run. GM to GM, you can do that for any game. If you love the kingdom building rules, if you want to build that, you want to make your characters movers and shakers in a local community, do it. Just do it. Just make them feel invested. And that's always one of the main things that any GM, any storyteller wants to do with the people that are being dedicated and sitting at the table, or they're on Skype or Roll20 or whatever. You've got to get your players in the game. And so we've started doing that a little bit. But for a while there, our Stoneheart Valley game kind of went off the rails, and I threw in the adventure mini campaign, The Vault of Larencair, which is a fantastic module. I'll throw links in here on the video, that way you guys can see this and you can check it out, see if it's for you and your group. This is an old book PDF. Let me tell you that it's not pretty, and it's got charm. It's got a great theme according to the artwork. So if there's something that you're looking for that makes your players feel like they're in an established world, I would recommend you get these products, because one thing about Lost Lands and Necromancer / Fraud God games that I've always enjoyed is that it feels like somebody's tried this before. It feels like somebody's been here before, and you're probably going to find their corpse on the way. You're probably going to find that they are no longer here. With that said, we've had a lot of success. The players made it through the Vault of Larencair. It's supposed to be for levels 5 to 9 for most third ed games, and so we topped it. We started when the players were roughly about second level. In Pathfinder, you're a little bit higher power curve. I'm also a very sadistic DM, and I have no problem throwing the players in a situation to where they don't need to go as fast. Maybe they should survey, maybe they should take a look around, scope out, see if there's some things they can do. Is there a side quest here? You have to sometimes rock the characters on their heels too. You have to sometimes let Bob the Paladin know that yes, there is a lich that lives in this city. If you are not careful, you will find him, and he will probably take your soul, put it in his jawbone or in his teeth, and your corpse will fall to the ground, and your friends will be very scarred for life. All at third level. Have fun. I enjoy games like that. I'm not saying that I like to kill characters. That I like doing through the course of an accomplished campaign. I think every DM does. I think every DM loves to make character death appropriate. We hate arbitrary character death. We hate, well, the die rolls did it. I think we all do. But there are some times when the dice take over your game and they tell a story. So in the Vault of Larencair, we lost 6 players. 6 player characters, not 6 players. We actually lost about 3 to 4 dedicated players just because of scheduling conflicts. Not everybody can play for 12 hours every third Sunday. That happens. So, we have been involved with this game since July or August of 2016. And after January of this year, I started running every third weekend for 12 hours at a time. Now, sometimes we'll have like a spur of the moment game, and we try to get together. And DMs out there that are watching this because you're subscribed to my channel. If you're already in here at 15 minutes, you're probably here to stay. I'm not saying I'm going to suck, but I'm just going to say that you're invested and you like the things that come out of my mouth. But what I am trying to impart is that sometimes you need to have a let's get together for a game tonight, or let's do a board game night, or let's just go out and do something. Sometimes you have to do that, and it doesn't have to be on your scheduled game day. I mean, most people that are gamers at each other's tables, most of us get along pretty well. There's that one or two players that we don't see each other till game day. Scheduling or personal conflicts, that happens. Be adults about it. I know this game is made for 12-year-olds and up, but eventually those 12-year-olds become adults. So I'm also cataloging this for younger kids. Do yourself a favor. Don't say the most hurtful things to the player across the table from you. Because one, it ruins friendships, and two, you have things that will come up later and harsh words and harsh criticisms directed at the person that's supposed to be your friend and supposed to be a player at your table. These things are supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a reason for you to go from, we're strangers, 2 years from now, there'll be a, my celebration for either my new job promotion, or I'm going to be on his side of town, we're going to go to lunch, or maybe 5 years from now that guy's going to be at your wedding, he's your best man, or he's a really good friend. Game table friendships are much different than real world religions or not religions, but friendships and relationships, because the gaming table seems like forges a deep bond that rarely will you have outside of, say, something like military service, where you're conscripted together and you're forced to be in the same bunkhouse, and you know this guy, you know how he snores, and you know how he acts during duress and in combat. I'm not saying that role players have PTSD, or not trying to say we're a hardened bunch, but I'm just saying that the friendships that you make at a gaming table tend to last a little longer than most regular friendships. Even ones over online console or computer games. But these, back to the focus of the story, the narrative that I was getting at was that the players had lost about 5 other individuals at the table. Roughly about 7 to 8 characters, now that I think deeply about it, because there was a couple Paul had, and killed Paul's. I actually had Paul's character die at my table. But after a long slog, the players explored this portion of the underground, and they came across the vault that this drow had this massive amount of loot not waiting for them. He had not according to the book, but I inserted a apprentice, like a 9th level, 10th level character, to harass the characters. The characters did kill it, but not before I innervated the wizard down to 6 hit points, pretty much withered the fighter with a few choice spells, and I did some other things that turned it from a 7-on-1 fight to a 3-on-1 fight. Now, the thing about Pathfinder or any RPG is most games are set up to have this action economy where everybody around the table will go that's a player or on the same team, and their individual characters will go, and then the GM's one action will happen. So the GM has to have something that's a little bit more super powered, but the nature of dice rolling is that sometimes you roll low and the GM's not able to do much. And a lot of players love that, because that's the old style mentality for a lot of games, where you have one big bad guy in a dungeon and you hit him with the biggest, baddest spell the wizard's got, or this scroll that he found, what have you, and it didn't really work that well this time. The Vault of Laren Care almost killed my party. And as a DM I accepted the casualties from that miniature campaign because it is a mini campaign. It's really well detailed. It's 3 towns on a very large hex-based grid. I mean, for them being only 5th to 9th level, these characters are traveling, according to the module, between 350 to 450 miles, sometimes at a hitch. And you can run it like that if you want to, but I decided not to because I wanted the players to have it a little more doable, and the way I run random encounters is kind of rough as it is. I don't need to go by that set of logistics because then the players would either be assuredly dead 4 times over, or by the time the campaign was done and over with, they'd be level 16. Not going to do that. It was bad enough I gave them an apprentice from this drow wizard to fuck with. And boy, did it really play with the party. But at the end of the day, the party had a really nice haul come out of that. And they inserted themselves back into the Lost Lands Stoneheart Valley game. Put it all in the same valley. Most of Lyrankar, there must be a helicopter going across. Most of Lyrankar, or either that or my neighbors, anyway, most of Lyrankar takes place underground, except for about a quarter to a third of it. But most of it takes place underground. The action does. And it has some really good fights. I even fouled up once, and fouled up multiple times, but the main time I really screwed up was the party had just came out of a couple slogs, and I had them down to about a quarter of their resources and hit points, and I hit them with this dragon, this large CR-10 dragon. I even rolled for damage on the breath weapon, and once I realized like my party was basted, I said, you guys come out of your dream, out of your nightmare, and you wake up, you're in camp. Or I said something to that effect, or I retconned it to that effect. But needless to say, as a GM, I want to have my players sit down for the next game. So you don't go arbitrarily just killing them off. You, at least if they die, you allow them some sort of poignancy or some sort of reason why their character's dead. Most of the time you want to do that. You don't really want to kill them off in the middle of a random encounter. Had that happen to a player character of mine on Venus once during Mutant Chronicles. First random encounter, had a bat swoop down, tear my head off. The rest of the campaign was pretty fun. Oh wait, my guy was dead, so I had to roll up another character. Now, Frog God Games, segue. Frog God Games puts out a lot of great supplements. For those of you that are looking for something to accentuate your game, I'm going to highlight some other products for a while. So, others of you may want to fast forward, but I'm going to highlight some books that I think that every DM should have in either PDF or print form, aside from Stoneheart Valley. Tom Nouse is a really accomplished writer for Frog God, and he wrote a book called Fields of Blood. I would give it at least 4 stars. Is there great things in there for you to use and pillage as a GM? Yes. Are there player-centric things like archetypes? Yes. Is the adventure that's included in it worthy of reading? Yes. Now copy and paste that for Dunes of Desolation too, because as far as I'm concerned, their desert series in this, their desert information, how to properly run a extended leg of your campaign in Sands is fantastic. I don't know Tom's background, but Mr. Nows understands how to write great fluff and mechanics for the D20 Pathfinder system. If you can find these books, buy them. They're really good additions to your library. Now, the next book I'm going to add is a book that I let bits and pieces out in my campaign, because that is how I see this campaign going.
And I have to discuss this a little differently than most books that are campaigns on rails or wheels. And the book I'm talking about is The Esteemed Sword of Air. Now, I first read about this book in an advert back in 2004, right around the time when 3.5 was coming around, and I was looking at the back of the Necromancer book that I had in front of me. And Necromancer advertised this book where it looked like it was a cool artifact quest for about $20 or $15. It was pretty high price for back then. Odd to think how $15 might be high price, but this book is about $100. Yeah, 1 penny off from $100. And if you're looking for a campaign that you can drip feed your players, you give them a clue here, a clue there. You give them small bits of information. It's really one of those campaigns that over the course of years at your table, you're going to feed them information. And you're going to give them some small things here and there. And you might have another player at your table that takes notes, and she or he will be thinking, I need to have this looked at further. And they go to a sage and ask them about these clues and what does it all tie into. Now, with the Sword of Air comes this really nice map. One thing about Frog God is that they believe putting things on a big enough scale to where your game fits in it. I don't know if you can see this, but these hexes are 50-mile hexes. This is the campaign roll for the book. I just showed you the Sword of Air. And that right there is the Desolation, where my favorite adventure, The Slumbering Tsar, takes place. Rapanathuk is not my favorite adventure. Rapanathuk is my favorite grinder. It's where you put your player characters when they've been bad. Not saying your player characters, all of them deserve to go there, but for player characters that think they are the end-all be-all, throw them at Rapanathuk and they will die. But the Sword of Air is a campaign that you feed to them about 2 campaigns before you run it. You just give them information, just a little bit here, maybe a paragraph there, a journal entry there, here, there. And you don't give them the complete picture. And when you're running it, the Sword of Air inside that book has about 100 encounter areas that are varying in challenge from level 1 to level 20. And there's a couple that are higher than that. It also details the unraveling of the world and how one of the NPCs will try to engineer it using the player characters. So you get the complete picture with the Sword of Air. I'm not saying that's bad, I'm saying that's really good. They give you all the tools you need as a DM to set up your campaigns for the next probably 5 years of table play. Now, am I saying you're going to get tired of it and get bored? You probably will. Sometimes your players don't want to adventure anywhere else but Galarian or Forgotten Realms or places like that. But if you have a tolerant bunch at your table and they really fall in love with your style of play, like my style of running a game, I run it slow. Slow experience points is perfect for me because it allows me to set up the players and give their characters time and room to grow. And by the time they advance from like 1st to 3rd level, they are pretty well known in the campaign world within 20 miles from where they stand. They might never have gone anywhere else, but I also don't believe that a player character should be from a far off and distant land, and he should start off conveniently where everybody else is starting off. The rest of you all are krauts in the port city of blah blah on the shores of Denmark, whereas Hakim is a traveler from far and wide across the planet, born in Baghdad, and level 1 just in time for this campaign to kick off. Now, I don't believe that. I think that if you're from a distant and far land, the character that you're playing should not start at level 1. He should start at like level 3, 4, 5, whatever. And therefore, you don't really start him off with the other neophytes in your campaign. He might be an NPC for a while, and when everybody else levels up to that appropriate time, then you let a player roll up that character and he inserts himself into the party. But that's just one of the things that's coming across my mindset. But the Sword of Air starts off very low key and it ends with a potential bang. With that being said, the campaign arc that we're on right now is the Slumbering Czar saga. And if anybody here has seen me run this, or if they've ever played in it themselves, or if you're one of the lucky few who played through it and beat it, congratulations to you and your GM for running through an excellent campaign. But if you haven't heard of it and you are looking for a deluxe campaign that is by and large a sandbox that's in limited scope, but it allows you to run a game from 7th to 20th level, don't look any further. Get that book. Get that book and put it at your table. Put it under your pillow. Read it. Do an hour of reading on it once a week. Make notes. Figure out how you're going to approach things. There's a lot in the first third of the book where it helps you set up everything for your players. The second and third portion of the book is not by the nose, but it gives you a very good set of details to where you shouldn't really have to make detailed notes to accommodate the players. And if you've read ahead and you know the adventure, you should be able to accommodate any unplanned items they have, any unplanned outbreaks of common sense or innovative spell use. But the Slumbering Czar saga is to me the iconic Frog God Games adventure. And here, 6 years after I first picked it up, it still provides me with chills when I read it, because I just think of the players that are having a good time watching their hit points fall off, sometimes in great amount, at the table. The first two encounters that are scripted in the first portion of the book are really awesome. But the second one, it is far more effective at just evoking scenes in my head, or the image of a pitched battle in the dark in your inn room. I'll shut up about it. Slumbering Czar saga. Tome of Horrors 4. If there ever was a not so great monster book, I would say this one here is going to fall within the mediocre range for most monster books. Not my favorite. There's some great monsters in here. This doesn't have the punch that the Tome of Horrors 1, 2, and 3 had. And I will eventually get the Pathfinder compilation of the first 3 Tome of Horrors, but I really like just having the 3.0 and 3.5 versions of them. This is the Tome of Horrors 3, the Tome of Horrors 2, which I feel is probably the high point. That is the high point for me of the Tome of Horrors series. And the first one, the Tome of Horrors, this was not a rebuttal of everything 3.0, but it came out and it had a very good feeling to it, like, here's some monsters that we used to play with in our game from First Ed, and some from the AC9 creature catalog, and they're really deadly. I hope you have fun with them. But there you go. And there were a lot of real fun monsters that you could throw in your game and just have a ball with. Now, I showed you guys this book 2 years ago. It's the Advanced Bestiary from Green Ronin. Green Ronin Press 2901. If there was ever a monster book that you had to have at your table, as a DM, I would have that book. I wouldn't even have the Bestiary at my table. I would just have that one, because there's 100 templates that augment existing monsters, and so basically that would be an exponential monster modifier. I think that even Paizo said that's an exponential monster modifier for your campaign, and it really rings true. They have very good reasons as to why certain monsters would be augmented. They give you campaign reasons. They give you an example for every template. So, as a DM that's been around for a while, reading that gives me new places to go to terrorize the players at my table. When they see me pull that book out, they start getting really anxious. Now, there's a book called Book of the Righteous by Green Ronin Press. Hopefully they'll make another version of it. I think it's being made for 5th edition. But if you want to have a campaign that feels more lived in, what I've done in the past, and I'm not saying this is going to work for you, but what works for me is that I'll have a couple different theologies present in my world, much like our own. You have, in our world, you have the Indian pantheon, you have the Sumerian, you have all of those things which are part of history and mythology. And they're important. And therefore, religion in your game should be important too. Now, I'm not saying it should be the focal point. Far from that. But should religion be in your games? Yes, absolutely. I mean, 2 of the main player classes are based on their faith and connection with a deity or with a philosophy. So, religion should be an important piece of the game world, not the hinging piece, not the linchpin, but it should be something big. The Book of the Righteous details everything well enough for you to run a game, and you can insert it just one little god at a time, or you can insert all of it. It can be the main ruling gods, it can be a group of gods that used to exist and have power or sway, but I found that works for me to make them the old gods. And there's even a sect of deities in here that are older gods, and that just works because having layered histories in your campaign world, it gives that layer of dust and grime for the players to hear it, and they feel like their characters are truly excavating history when they're pulling artifacts out of the sands or out of these tombs or mausoleums, or out of the grip of some long undead foe that has been the source of evil in this one portion of the world. It just is something to add character, and it might take more time for you to delve into it, but it also is something that allows you as a person to develop your mindset for your world design. It might not be everything you want, but it's going to send your head off into a direction for your world so you can layer history into it. And it's always important to layer your campaign history into your game. I know that sounds crazy, but just try it if you don't. Just try throwing some history in your game world and give your players a reason why they want to uncover it. Loot's always good. Gold is always a good way. Good reason to do that. Deep Magic. We'll never say enough about this. This is the book that my friend Paul runs to whenever I say, find a spell. And I have to reiterate, Paul, find a spell in the core rulebook. This book here was to me what Ultimate Magic should have been. And I'm not slamming Paizo too hard. Ultimate Magic had some really neat concepts. It brought in word magic, which I'm not too fond of. But it also brought us the Magus and a few other really nice spells. But I'm going to say that Deep Magic is where a lot of my games campaigns tend to go whenever I'm trying to research the mindset of a wizard and how wizards should design spells. If you're a GM or if you play a wizard or sorcerer, you really want to have access to this book, either PDF or I prefer print, of course. But this is a really good book to have. It's one of those books that every spell will give you a reason. I'm not trying to violate copyrights here, but Pathfinder. Munchkin Pathfinder bookmark. Alright. Skin change. Necromancy. It's a fourth shaman or druid level spell. Sorcerer, wizard 5, witch 4. Casting time is a standard action. Range is medium with 100 feet plus 10 foot per level. Targets one non-magical animal. Will saving throw negates. Does need you to have them roll spell resistance if they've got it. You cast a spell, and upon completing it, you immediately transfer your consciousness into the body of an animal within range, leaving your body unconscious unless the target animal succeeds on a will save. Failure to control the target ends a spell, and you retain your class and level or hit dice, as well as its class abilities derived from that class, plus all skill ranks and any other abilities not granted from your original physical form, like dark vision or non-magical flight. Skin changing for less than a day has no effects, but after the first 24 hours you must make a will save against a DC equal to the 10 plus the creature's original hit dice. If you fail as if you failed a second save of a baleful polymorph spell, and you have to make that saving throw every month afterwards. While you're inhabiting the form of a little animal creature, your body still requires to have food, and it will suffer the effects of starvation as outlined in the core rulebook if left unconscious long enough. Just a sampling of the diabolical thought process in their spells. Now, my game hasn't gone underground really hardcore yet, but there's 2 books out, and I hope they make a third, called Cyclopean Deeps. Cyclopean Deeps is as much of a strange and exciting trip that one could have if you want to play fantastical sword and sorcery. I would recommend you get those 2 books. In fact, you really don't need much more than those 2 books for your campaign because they're underground. You don't need to keep it housed within the Lost Lands. You could throw that in your Greyhawk, you could throw that in your Forgotten Realms. But as the players start at 10th level, they already have a little bit of power available to them. And as they go through the miles of walking underground and discovering what this strange realm entails, the encounters they have border on the fantastical and the strange. I was thinking about running Cyclopean Deeps on camera just so the player characters could go through it, and for the fact that somebody actually would have a video stream of Cyclopean Deeps up. And like I said before, this set of videos is not really for anybody in particular. They're meant to be listened to. You don't have to watch my face. But what I'm doing mainly is archiving this for my own personal use, because in 10 years I will go back and listen to these videos, and friends that have moved away or friends that are no longer with us, I'll probably raise a hearty glass of my favorite to them. And that got dark quick, but these are things that you archive for. And the gaming is really my way of relaxing. It's been my way of relaxing for decades. Anyway, Cyclopean Deeps is a must-read at the very least. Players that will go through it will probably have better stories than people that have ran through Second Darkness or other mainstream adventures like, say, the Council of Thieves, which was the first official Pathfinder adventure path. By the way, Starfinder's out. I got a chance to look at Starfinder today. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to run it. I've got my feet on the ground. I run in fantasy. And I do like sci-fi. I do love science fantasy. But I think the closest I'll ever get is probably reading through the Divine Engine saga that it's one of the adventure paths that came out. It's all science fantasy set in Numeria. Not Numeria. Yeah, it's Numeria in the Pathfinder world. It's a world with a bunch of crashed spaceships in it, and the currency is actually the little batteries for your equipment. But I find that to be a fun series to read, just because it's a good read. It's sometimes you'll find an adventure that you like to read more than you ever want to play, and that really is what a lot of Paizo adventures are like for me, because they do have interesting backstories, they have well-designed player, character, adversaries, but as far as running them at the table, I just don't feel it. I rarely feel the need to run that for my table. That being said, for those of you that want to play and run Starfinder, best of wishes. May your hits be crits. May you enjoy it. I'm not a big fan of it. I've been playing Star Wars, the D6 system, for 2 decades now, and I really like that. Really don't see a reason to get out of that. The next series of books I'm going to show you guys is Borderland Provinces. A little bit further south from the map that I showed you for Sword of Air are the Borderland Provinces, and most of that is just kind of like a dragon's eye view of the landscape, and it gives you a few things here and there and who's in power here, but it gives you a lot of wiggle room to design your own campaign. That's really not a bad idea. One of the add-ons to the Borderland Provinces is the journey generator. And I would like to see the journey generator in the standard Lost Lands campaign setting book when that comes out later next year. It's a wonderful thing. You roll, you are hired by X. You roll to deliver Y, roll to location Z. Roll. On the way, you will encounter a problem. Roll. That is your problem. It's really well designed. And they give you like 7 rolls to the do total, but that's the basic gist of it. And to me, as a DM, if you're not running out of a book, but you're running out of ideas, that's a good way to get the campaign back on track. To me, that sounds like a real solid system. Borderland Provinces, not integral to your Lost Lands game, but it's part of the Lost Lands campaign. And there's a lot of good information that they put together in the main book. The Adventures book has some really hard adventures. There's one that's for 2nd level, and it's a very well-designed horror-themed adventure, but I don't think as it's written, it's really going to be one of those things that you can play at your table without softening a blow. Your players might survive it if you run it as is. I'm betting not. DMs that have read that book know which adventure I'm talking about. Cults of the Sundered Kingdoms. This is located to the south and to the east of the main portion of Sword of Air. Has a campaign in it, takes you from 3rd level to 18th, and it's a really well designed campaign set up to be at normal experience point level, and it's got its own brand of horror that you can impart in it. Actually, all these books have been showing you, I haven't shown you any Paizo ones, but if there's one I think that a GM should have, it's horror adventures. And the reason why the reason why I say that is because horror and the mechanics behind the horror adventures, they provide you with extra motivation to succeed. and to survive. Sometimes survival is all the success you're going to get, or sometimes it's really not success if you keep living. You'd rather that character die and put him at rest. But I've got to say that the horror adventures that Paizo put together, that hardcover is fantastic. And if anybody is looking for another hardcover from the Paizo family, that one is well designed. I'm not saying that all of their books are great, or some of their books are bad, or all of their books are bad, but as a GM, their feats are well designed, they have good spells. They have really good spells in there. I will always be a critic of the Advanced Class Guide. Not my favorite book. Just, that's all you get out of me. Other people have ridiculed it, have reviewed it poorly. I feel they took the oxygen out of the room on that. I don't need to dogpile on it. Now, this book here, I'm going to show you, I've shown you before, called Trapsmith. It's from Kobold Press. At every table should be a thief or a rogue. Just one of those staples that should be in your fantasy games. Deal with it. Somebody needs to do that. Somebody needs to do the heavy lifting and make sure that the party doesn't die when rocks fall. The party's far away when that's triggered. Trapsmith gives you, the DM, a way to impart deadlier traps and a small education to the player of the rogue on how things would proceed in life. So it gives you a very nice Rube Goldberg set of explanations on how these traps work, on what's at risk. It has balanced mechanics. The book, if you can't find it in print form, it is $20. There should be a PDF for less. A lot of people get their PDFs for free illegally, but I recommend you buy them. That way you own them. Plus, it just feels better whenever you buy something because it's now yours. And most companies will remember that. You log in on a different computer, or your new computer, your new tablet, you can download it on that. It's just how it is. I like that. But Trapsmith is a staple at my campaign table. You won't always see me reference it, but I've got an idea for what trap I want to spring on my rogue next. And I've got to say that Brooke plays a fantastic rogue. Brooke has been playing Brev for a while, and I'm really happy to have him as part of my gaming table because he is an older gamer. He remembers the game as it was when they were essentially writing it out of a garage or freshly into a commercial building, and he remembers the joy it was to create his first character and how it was going from the basic to the advanced rules, how things change, and how people would argue about that. Just saying that for the most part, edition wars back then are just the same as edition wars now. You're going to have people that will argue Starfinder's better than Pathfinder, Pathfinder's better than 5th Ed, 5th Ed's better than Pathfinder. As a GM, find a rule set that you largely can agree with. For me, that's Pathfinder. Pathfinder's crunchy enough to where I can dig my heels in and get very comfortable running it behind the screen or standing up without a screen. It's a very easy system for me, but I've also been doing 3rd Ed since 2004. With that said, having a guy that's at the table that remembers the old style traps, it's helpful because a lot of gamers nowadays just think, oh, I roll this die and I add my modifiers and the trap's solved. There's no real issue. And I'm not saying that that's bad sometimes, but I prefer to have a little bit more meaty approach to dealing with traps. And this thing here could kill you. Describe to me how you're going to fondle it, how you're going to handle it, how are you going to probe its mysteries and try not to get the party killed should a stinking cloud or a poisonous cloud or a cloud kill spell or an acid fog erupts out of it. Tell me what you will do, O player. And I really like that. A lot of times I don't go into as much detail as I should, but I probably should do that. And one thing I've got here is a bunch of new minis. This isn't even the extent of the new minis I've got, but I've got more scenery mods than what I used to have. And I really like that because I feel that when you have a table set up, it's helpful to have a visual representation, which is why we always have used miniatures if we could. Or draw it on a map or whatever on a grid. But tell me what you're going to do to play with this and illustrate where you're standing when you're doing all of this. And I prefer that style. I think that is a better way to do it than just to Greyhawk it and say, oh, what was your perception? You know, you rolled a 27. You find a magical trap at the back of this chest, and once the hinge goes up and over, and I'm already describing too much than what Greyhawking is, but you succeed. It's a poison gas trap. Roll. You rolled a 32. You beat it. Ta-da! Here's your reward. And I hate that. So I like to have the character have a back and forth with me. Preferably in character, but sometimes the players don't do that. Sometimes they're, well, I'll have Brev. No, I will hold the chest and I will try to do my best to probe around the backside of it and see where exactly I feel the magic is originating from. Okay, well, using detect magic? Yes. Alright, so when you make your roll, because we're going in depth, I'm going to give you a plus 17 to find this. Now, it is a hard roll, so I hope you roll high. You rolled a natural 19, that's great. Well, the difficulty was 34, so because of your magic and because of the fact you are probing it, you do succeed. And you realize that this is a 6th level spell on this chest, so I'm just going to ask you to roll high and sweat a little bit for me, because if not, you feel this could turn into a roll the following stats down the side of your character sheet: strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. And I went into that, I dallied with that, but that's the type of game I want to run. And I have, in my heart, I feel like I have been running that. There was a Kickstarter 2 years ago for the Northlands Complete Saga. Now, there's more Northland stuff that they've released. They've got 6 little adventure books. But that is a really weighty tome, and it takes you from 1st level to 20th level. Now, there are some suggestions that Kenneth Spencer has in there for what characters you should allow in your game and which ones you should absolutely say, no, don't do that. And I don't really agree with that, but I can understand why he did that. As an old school GM, I understand you don't want to have certain character classes get involved with certain games. You don't want to have a guy playing a ninja in a Viking world. Some people are like, well, look at all the role-playing possible. Being a fish out of water, that's just awesome. No, it's not. And I'm biased against Oriental characters just because of the fact that since the first edition of Oriental Adventures, it always seemed like Oriental characters were cut above the rest of the Western classes, and they're not really. In their own environment, they're great, but they're not. They're an armor class and a bag of hit points, and it's your job to pierce that bag and bleed them out slowly. That's my opinion of most player characters, but the Oriental characters, it always felt like there was a kid from Iowa who saw American Ninja and he's like, I want to have that as my character. And that's just how I feel. Deal with it. The Northlands Complete, for what it is a great campaign setting that's tied to a really good campaign. There's a lot of Viking and Norse mythos in it. I don't recommend it for most tables. They'll never get started. The GM will look at it, he'll want it, He'll read it. He'll start be maybe 60, 70 pages in, and he'll get bored because, well, Kenneth Spencer wrote a fantastic tome. A lot of GMs don't read it. A lot of GMs don't read the adventure they're running until they're at the table. And that is one of the modules or one of the campaigns or one of the adventures you must read 2 to 3 times before you sit down with your players. Deal with it. Now, with that being said, if you take the time to read your adventures before you sit down with your players, I'm going to tell you, yes, run it. You're going to have a blast. And that's all there is to it. There's not much more. That's the biggest criticism I have for budding GMs. Read your material. If you're running a pre-bought store module, read it. Don't just buy it, shelve it, and then take it down off the shelf on the day you're running your game. Don't do that. You want to piss off people at your table? Do that. Alright. Off my soapbox. This is Bard's Gate. This is the campaign book that has been hinted at for years. They had a 3.0 version of it, not as good as this. But if there was ever a love letter to the campaign itself or to the people in the community, this is probably it. Bard's Gate even has Tinker's Tavern in it, which is a cop bar inside the city. If you aren't a member of Tinker's Tavern or on the forums, it's understandable, not everybody is, but it is a community of old school gamers that love to talk about the exploits at the table. And sometimes, yeah, they talk a little bit of smack around about 5th Ed or Pathfinder, and they'll praise the virtues of 1st or 2nd edition gaming, or even basic D&D. My elf is 4th level, my halfling 6th level, whatever. But I'm going to tell you that this is a campaign book written by someone who's a fan of the stuff we're already a fan of. With that being illustrated verbally, with that being said, Bard's Gate belongs in every library. Just as much as The Slumbering Czar needs to be read by every DM that's ever rolled a polyhedral dice. I'm going to tell you that that same GM or that same referee needs to have Bard's Gate in their library, because it is, for the 2010s, what Ptolus was for the 2000s. Now, do they stack up against each other pretty well? Yeah, I actually kind of prefer Ptolus better, but Monty Cook had a better way of imparting, almost on the same level as M.A. Barker for Empire of the Petal Throne. Monty Cook, to me, is that level of writer. I probably inflate him too much, but I just prefer Ptolus. Now, that being said, Ptolus is on a print on demand, as far as I know, and my copy of it has been stolen. I could go get another copy, I probably will, but Bard's Gate is in print, and it offers you the same things, just at a lower power level. In fact, this is the type of campaign book that you won't see Monty Cook run for 3.0 or 3.5, because Monty Cook wanted it to where when you read the DMG, you could see these things being viable in your campaign. So if you're running a 17th level campaign, he wanted things to be at 17th level for the players, so they would not feel like they were the movers and shakers, but they were in a world where they could feel comfortable with. And Bard's Gate is set for, it feels like it's set for a campaign to top out around 8th level. It just is the actual feeling of it. But the entire Lost Lands campaign, as it is, always feels like it's at a lower power level than what core rulebook Pathfinder is written for. Now, with that, I also must tell you that that's not a bad thing. It's easy to add power levels and high magic to these campaigns. You just do. You just have an idea in your head, how am I going to do this? And then you just write it out real quick, and you start feeding it in bite-sized amounts to the players. And then, take good notes, and If you fuck up, admit it. Hey, I fucked up. Maybe they'll let you retcon. Bard's Gate gets a pass. It gets actually 5 stars. It's a wonderful read. And for those people that like old school Renaissance campaigns and books, it's a really good host city to have the players build their legacy out of. Actually, you could run like 4 campaigns simultaneously out of Bard's Gate, and most of them won't even bump into each other. Back to Tom Nouse. Tom Nouse, he did those Dunes of Desolation. He also wrote Marshes of Malice and Mountains of Madness. I haven't had a chance to read both those yet. What I have read of Marshes of Malice is when I do run my campaign that involves a lot more swamp-based adventuring and slogging through 50-mile hexes through the bogs. Marshes of Malice is going to be a mass graveyard because it is written with a high degree of lethality. Most of the Lost Lands, as a general rule, is written that way, but it's also designed for the GM to impart to players, here's some hints. You're in an area where you could die pretty easily if you don't watch yourself. I'm just letting you know. And most players should catch that. Most players we should probably act according to our strengths. And as a team, we should probably try to capitalize on each other's weaknesses and cover those up. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Marshes of Malice is really good. I'm a fanboy of Frog God Games. I don't hide that fact. Every time they have a Kickstarter out, I participate. At least if it's for Pathfinder. I didn't get involved with Quest of Doom 3. There was not a Pathfinder version. It was already out for Pathfinder. Just it was split up. But Frog God puts out a very fine set of books. They even have one on the way called The Blight. Plan on looking at that. It's on the west coast of their continent. Casterhage is supposed to be written by Richard Pett, I believe. One of my top 3 authors for the Pathfinder 3.5 series. And for that would be Monty Cook, Richard Pett, and Nicholas Logue. For those of you that never read Nicholas Logue, go back to Rise of the Rune Lords, Book 3. The Ogres, Sieging Sandpoint is written by Nick Logue. The undercurrent of deprivation that's in that entire adventure, that should scare the hell out of your players. That should scar them. So, with that being said, Nick Logue and Richard Pett are good friends, or were good friends, and I know they used to get together at Gen Con, and they would have contests with each other because they would always try to outdo each other, and they are good authors. For what they do, if you see a Richard Pett or Nicholas Logue on your book, buy it. If it's in your hands, just take it to the register and buy it. Today's the second day of Gen Con. Going on the third now. Started Thursday, it's now Saturday at 1 a.m. These are the 2 books for Rapanathuk. This is the Granddaddy, Rapanathuk, and this is the Expansions book. Both of them have a large amount of detail for the surrounding area around the mausoleum for Rapanathuk, and they also have a large amount of detail underground, which is what meat and potatoes of Rapanathuk is. It's supposed to be that way. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, years ago this campaign was written where there was this huge dungeon and it was supposed to kill player characters. And these 2 guys from college got together and they wrote it, and they made a wonderful campaign. They ran it at a lot of Gen Cons or other conventions, and nobody ever beat it. It's now 2017. Nobody's beaten Panathuk. Ever. So with that being said, maybe that'll be my next campaign. I would like to do that. I would actually like to run Panathuk and see if the players can get through it. I used to have a guy at my table, Matt. We called him T-Rex because of his last name, but T-Rex. We're playing with Bruce. Bruce, run us for Panathuk, and that was it. The other players would kind of get in line with Matt, and they'd all saunter down. They'd kind of line down, and they loved Panathuk. And it is a really well designed module. It's a great campaign. You can do a lot with it. Those are the books that I have typically in my bag or on PDF, but I've got those books, and I feel they're important to have as a GM. Trying to look at my shelf, see if there's anything else I need to bring to your attention. Reaper put out some new figs. In the middle of painting them up. But this is the skeleton that I'm currently working on. There's a lot of work to be done on it, I know. I really like this Ballard. This guy seems to be pretty well designed, and he stands about 4 inches high with a wingspan. I just thought that would be something cool to show, but those are the things I'm working on. I'm preparing tonight to get my miniature case in order. That way I have all the figs I need for Sunday's game. With that being said, and I say with that being said a lot, meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice, no, our next game, Sunday, should involve us getting information for what lies beneath, because the players have found the entrance to the Stoneheart dungeon, they think. They found some priest quarters on the top floor. They found a fountain of blood, and they're kind of confused about it. They also found a Vrock demon. Should also mention the Vrock demon. They piddled around at the fountain, and a Vrock demon appeared. By the way, that's one of my favorite demons ever written up in D&D, is the Vulture Demon. I think it's a very well designed foe, and my players are scared to bejeebus about it. Hopefully they have the moxie to find their grit and go down. And I would love to see them succeed. I've ran this adventure before with a different group of people. Paul, I've got to salute, because Paul goes off to Monday. He goes to Kabul for his job. And he's going to be there for a while. I'm not going to have him at my table. So that's kind of hitting me kind of hard tonight. You always worry whenever you have a player go off to a dangerous place. Like, a lot of us have had friends go off in military service or things like that. Some of them didn't come back, and it just provides us with some bittersweet memories. And there's a poem called "The Empty Chair," and quite often it's featured in the Knights of the Dinner Table periodical. There's a lot of tears that come out every month that read that, I'm sure. And earlier this year, we lost some big figures in the gaming markets guys that have been around for a long time. The old guard is getting hit pretty hard in 2017. And it feels like on every aspect, the Gen Xers are having this bitter pill to swallow because it's our turn to start going to the doctor, doing those uncomfortable man or adult things because our bodies are getting older and some of us don't take as care as much as we should. Here I am drinking a beer with 2 raw eggs in it. But you have people that are getting older, and some guys aren't going to make it next year at your table. Some people aren't going to be there at next Gen Con. And so it's really important. I kind of hinted at this before, was talking to the younger crowd, but it goes to bear saying that when you have people at your table, you do have a special friendship that you're forging. And it's really not a good thing to have bile or hatred or spite come out of your mouth, especially for guys that they're at your table. They didn't come to argue with you. They came to enjoy a game. And they came to roll dice. One of my main problems with the new crowd is that there's this thought process that we have to have open arms for diversity. And I think that's bollocks. While we should celebrate everybody's individual tastes and such, that doesn't give people carte blanche authority to trample on the rights and privacies of others. The gaming community is one of the most diverse communities out there, and it has always been that way. Back when I was a young lad, there was a company called Judges Guild in Decatur, Illinois. My, for all intents and purposes, hometown growing up. I lived 12 miles outside it. I know Decatur very well. And there was a young man there by the name of Paul Jacques, who was a author or a writer for Judges Guild. Now, Judges Guild is a fine company. A lot of those guys aren't here with us anymore. God bless you, Bob Bledsaw and family, because you guys have contributed a lot to the game, a lot to the history. And Mr. Jacques was one of the first times I ever heard of somebody getting the transition done from man to woman. Now, personal opinions aside, that doesn't mean that when they sit down at your table that it's time to make fun of somebody. They're sitting at your table no matter what. So you better be happy as a GM that you've got bodies that are wanting to spend the next 3 or 4 hours to kill a dragon, or to engage in a political social commentary wrapped in a narrative of game mechanics. The games that we play should not be about social justice warrioring. They should not be about you on your solo quest to irritate other people that just want to blow steam and relax. But the fact that you have an opportunity to broaden your friendships and to broaden your mindset and to welcome people into your life for a brief period of time is pretty special. It was a real hard pill for me to swallow when, as a bigoted 20-something, my best friend from high school was gay. And I told him to his face at the age of 20, "How can you be gay? Have you seen the women out there?" I mean, and that was just how I thought. I couldn't believe how somebody could prefer to do something different. But you know what? He doesn't run around neighborhoods with a chainsaw. He doesn't blow up churches. He doesn't destroy people's livelihoods. He pays his taxes. He does his thing. And it's one of those things to where no matter what somebody does in their off time, our hobby of being gamers needs to solidify itself more and probably lose the diversity talk probably loosen up on it at the very least. Because diversity is one of those things that we're already well versed in just as a culture. We are a counterculture to real world, to real life as it is. Other people would rather spend their Saturdays doing fantasy football or watching NFL or chasing skirts at the local fair or festival. And some of us would just rather enjoy being in a basement that smells like ass, rolling dice, hacking through a dungeon, killing 100 rats, or talking about how great it was to play Ultima 2. Things like that. So, when you find an akin mindset to that, a lot of people will glom onto that. I'm not saying you have to be best friends with them or invite them in your house and let them drink all your coffee. Oh God, don't do that, you bastard. But I am saying that tolerance should already be part of this community's mindset. And a lot of people don't see me as a voice that should even mention that. But that's exactly where I'm coming from, because in all honesty, this community is one of the first communities that preach tolerance. We had people wanting to play female elves back in the 70s, and they had like 6-inch dicks at the table, okay? And I know that some of you guys are, I just lost like half my audience there, but trying to impart that when the rest of the world was scared to death that Ronald Reagan was going to be president, we were worried about the fact that, I don't know if Timmy really needs to be at our table, because he always plays an elf chick and he dances around. I mean, listen, be happy that Timmy is there, want to be a 6th level mage and cast Fireball. Because the friendships that you're going to forge over dice and really badly processed potato chips and carbonated drinks, those friendships don't come around often enough. And that's basically my video for the Saturday morning. You guys have a good game, and best of wishes to you in your endeavors in your campaign. And I'll see you on Sunday.